This video is actually part 2 of 2. If you'd like to watch part 1 first, there's a link in the description. Narrows. Without cooling systems such as these, excess heat from the Ark's forges would render the construct uninhabitable. As the description states, this is one of many cooling stations located on the Ark. Without these, the heat from forging immense structures like halo rings would be so great that flora and fauna would be unable to live on the installation's surface. In the distance, an identical structure is visible, and we can assume beyond that are many more identical cooling systems. Clearly, these structures are successful in their design, as the Ark has many different biome types across its vast surface. Creating a planet-sized structure like a halo ring is a very resource-intensive process, and such a process produces incredible amounts of heat. So much so that the Forerunners had to create these bridge-like structures to combat it. Think of Narrows as a giant refrigerator coil, which would also explain why the surrounding area is iced over. Its perfect symmetry and overall curious design makes it an excellent location for tactical wargame simulations. Much like Construct, even a location like this, somewhere the Forerunners most likely never visited, was created with the utmost care. Ornate patterns and glass walkways illustrate that the Forerunners valued presentation just as highly as functionality. Snowbound. Hostile conditions did not prevent the Covenant from seeking salvage on this buried Forerunner construct. Snowbound was formerly a Forerunner world that the Covenant now have control over. It's located somewhere within the spiral arm of the galaxy, close to human-occupied space. Snowbound is one of very few Halo 3 multiplayer maps that isn't located on Earth or on the Ark. Its exact location, however, is unknown, as it is kept a secret. But by who? The previous Covenant occupiers? The Forerunners before them? Or the UNSC after discovering this base of operations? Deep beneath the ice lies a cavernous network of Forerunner structures. Much like everything else in this strange wasteland, their exact purpose is unknown. 2 large planets and a single sun almost completely fill the sky. Their exact designations are, again, unknown. Far out in the distance lies an endless expanse of frozen tundra. These frosty wastes appear to stretch infinitely into the horizon. On the other side of the map is a relatively short cliff face with 3 small canyons that seemingly lead nowhere. Beyond that, a large snow-covered mountain, or perhaps a long dormant volcano, sits imposingly in the distance. The Covenant occupiers that I've mentioned either left or were driven out. Otherwise, how could the UNSC have time to scan this location and eventually use it in wargame simulations? Under a shallow layer of ice in a small cave is an old Canadian coin. How did it get here? Perhaps it was a good luck token left here on accident by the people who were responsible for cataloging this location. The Covenant, as always, appear to be siphoning energy from the Forerunner constructs to power their bases on either side of the map, and most certainly, the automated turrets surrounding the location. The power to one side has been mostly severed, the lights atop the structure remain cold, and the devices within struggle to function. Whatever is here, the Covenant clearly found it very interesting. Interesting enough to set up a perimeter of automated plasma turrets. These deadly turrets will destroy any living being that doesn't properly transmit the correct authorization codes. Since the fall of High Charity and the Covenant, these codes have been lost, leaving these malicious machinations to endlessly defend their long-gone masters. Why did the Covenant feel the need to create such intense fortifications? Whatever was out there in that frozen wasteland was dangerous enough for them to place these turrets, stopping anyone or anything from approaching. Whatever it was, the Covenant wanted to make absolutely certain that it stayed far away. Sorry to interrupt, but do me a quick favor and press that subscribe button real quick. Oh, and hit the thumbs up too when you're down there. Done? Okay, thanks. The Pit. Software simulations are held in contempt by the veteran instructors who run these training facilities. Ironically, as players, we're all very familiar with the Pit, which means this location was eventually cataloged and used in wargame simulations, the very thing the drill sergeants and instructors that run this place were against. This location, like many other Halo 3 maps, takes place in Africa. Beyond a large chain link fence is a landing zone for Pelicans and other UNSC aircraft. It's also populated with missiles, various supplies, a few warthogs, and one of the UNSC's most powerful tools, the forklift. Just beyond that is Mount Kilimanjaro. According to signage in the area, this particular facility is UNSC Training Facility B. Various radio chatter can be heard over the facility's intercom systems.
Remember, silence, quiet, fire.
The buildings show signs of age, therefore the more high-tech targets of brutes and jackal snipers were most likely added in later. Above the training area are several metallic walkways that crisscross the entire facility. Clearly, these are used for observing the training exercises from a safe distance. Located in one of the buildings are several monitors and computer stations. The outer walls of this room are adorned with signs that read Ops Center, UNSC DF. This is clearly where instructors would sit and plan future tactical exercises. In the room are 5 displays, each cycling through the same series of images. These images display seismic activity, details regarding the sector, a satellite view of the area, a tactical map, and a UNSC insignia. Floating in the air above are several small yellow birds, most likely native to the region, and to the other side, grassy green hills topped with sporadic groups of trees. Within those trees are several plumes of smoke. Are these signals of some kind? No one knows for certain. Valhalla. The crew of V-398 barely survived their unplanned landing in this gorge, this curious gorge. While the true purpose of this location is unknown, many UNSC scientists believe the beam emitters on each side act as some form of communication, sending basic information from one system to another. Much like the rest of the Forerunners' handiwork, they still operate today, despite the absence of any custodians. Valhalla isn't the only version of this gorge. In fact, the Forerunners liked the design so much that they not only built it here, but on Requiem, one of their many artificial planets as well. Can you blame them? Valhalla is a fantastic location. It's just beautiful. The blue lake toward the back of the map, the crystal clear flowing rivers that snake throughout the landscape, the towering waterfall opposite of the lake, the snow-capped mountain ranges in the distance, and the surely wonderful smelling pine trees everywhere make this one of, if not the prettiest locations we've discussed so far. Imagine building a campfire here, sitting back and relaxing and enjoying some delicious hot s'mores as you stare into the endless expanse of foreign stars above. On one side of the play space is the previously mentioned crashed Pelican. Perhaps its operators crashed here during the battle for the Ark, which is where Valhalla is located. The description of the map states that those who were in the Pelican survived, albeit barely. Where they are now is unknown, but one thing's for certain, there are certainly far worse places to crash land. Foundry. After the orbital elevator fell, supply warehouses sending munitions to space were soon abandoned. The description of the map tells us a lot already. First of all, it tells us this entire room was used to store supplies of all kinds that would get shipped up and off Earth via the New Mombasa space elevator. After its unfortunate collapse, these warehouses were abandoned, but that wouldn't stop the UNSC from cataloging this one and later using it for wargame simulations. A large crane hangs from the ceiling, designed to lift and relocate the various cargo strewn about the building. This particular warehouse was owned by Traxxas Heavy Industries before it was procured by the UNSC. It's located in Africa, of course, somewhere within the city of Voi. Outside is a large body of water in what appears to be the Great Mount Kilimanjaro. Just before the mountain is a collection of industrial buildings and what appears to be some kind of pipeline. But unfortunately for the economy and industry in the area, the destruction of the New Mombasa space elevator renders this entire complex mostly useless, leaving the area abandoned. In the dark corridors towards the back of the building are several gated halls that can't be accessed by normal means. Hidden on one of the walls of these dark corridors is a poster of a very strange object, one of humanity's greatest achievements, the oversized glow-in-the-dark soccer ball. Rat's Nest. Snow melt from Kilimanjaro feeds reservoirs every bit as vital as the fuel and ammunition stores. Rat's Nest's design is very similar to the Halo 3 campaign mission Crow's Nest. Not only is the architecture the same, but the location appears to be as well. Much like Crow's Nest, Rat's Nest is built into the side of a mountain. Given the description of the map and cliffside views, I believe it's safe to assume we're on Mount Kilimanjaro. The varied tunnels and looping design of the base makes it an interesting location for wargame simulations. It's particularly well suited for objective-based exercises like Capture the Flag or Assault, and thanks to its circular design, it's an excellent area to practice your Warthog driving skills. The pipeline that circles through the building is an ideal hiding spot for snipers or patient shotgun campers. 2 large supply crane lifts hang from the ceiling and extend high into the mountain. Perhaps there's a landing zone at the top, or the supplies are simply transferred to higher levels of the base. A lot of the walls are covered in the same grid-like pattern of holes that are seen in high ground. An inaccessible observation deck overlooks a hangar labeled A2. A Pelican is parked on the base's cliffside landing pad. Frequent Pelican and Hornet traffic pass by, overlooking a small military fob and several chunks of debris from the New Mombasa space elevator. While the base is an excellent tactical location, it's not exactly a place you should let a child roam freely. Tons of cautionary signs throughout the complex warn of deadly dangers such as falling rocks, which is evident by this being labeled as a hard hat area. There are also warnings of magnetic turbines, which I can't seem to locate, corrosive exposure risk, high voltage areas, and frequent high pressure valves. But that doesn't negate the importance of this vital human stronghold. Standoff. Once nearby telescopes listened for a message from the stars. Now these silos contain our prepared response. Like many other multiplayer maps in Halo 3, Standoff once again takes place in Africa. Given the terrain similarities to other locations in Halo 3, I would assume this area isn't too far from Voi. On one side of the map is a collection of farming buildings like barns and silos. On the other are massive, imposing satellites designed to pick up communications from space. Thanks to the advancements in human communication technologies, this site has been rendered mostly useless, save for its eventual war games applications. The large circular plates labeled 1, 2, and 3 are missile silos that housed archaic weaponry. Despite that, they were still fired upon the Covenant out of desperation during the Battle of Earth. Standoff is a military base called Kupiga Simu, which is Swahili for call, likely referencing the satellite dish's original purpose. Within the bases that are located on each side of the map are multiple different monitors, each displaying the same images the screens in the pit cycled through. Both bases are in Africa, but given the use of the same images in both places, perhaps they're much closer together than it may seem. A small flock of the same yellow birds seen in the pit fly above the area, further suggesting these two locations are not all that far from one another. In the sky, several smoke trails can be seen along with their creators, fast-moving in-atmosphere jets, likely on their way to a distant battle. Avalanche. Freezing winds scour blasted terrain, and ancient battle scars are a grim reminder that this is a precious prize. Looking into the sky reveals that Avalanche takes place on the surface of the newly created replacement ring for Installation 04, the same ring the Master Chief destroyed in Halo CE. The ring isn't complete yet. Because of this, it's somewhat broken and full of holes. This ring is the same ring that Master Chief and Orbital used to destroy the Flood on the Ark in the end of Halo 3. The Forerunner architecture here functions as a power station. According to an archived Bungie.net post, this facility, quote, pulls its power out of the densely compacted glacial ice that constantly builds up behind the station before it cascades into the ocean below it, end quote. How the Forerunners are able to pull power out of ice, I have no idea. Perhaps it's similar to hydroelectric power? Perhaps the Forerunners have discovered a way to harness the kinetic energy from the falling chunks of ice? I really don't know. A partly frozen, iceberg-covered ocean extends forever into the horizon. Embedded into the cliff walls are large 3-piece gravity lifts that serve an unknown function. On each side of the map is an entrance to a large Forerunner structure. Deep within the structure is a seemingly infinite supply of strange, blue-laced tubes. This is most likely where the power and energy is stored to later be distributed throughout the ring. According to the map's description, an ancient battle was waged here, but time has since covered any evidence of a past struggle. How an ancient struggle could have taken place on a newly formed Halo ring, I have no idea. Throughout the map are ice spikes that appear to be pouring out a warm, steamy vapor. Considering that this takes place on a Halo ring, a completely artificial construct, it's odd that there would be any hot springs below the ice's surface. But as we know, the Forerunners made weird things sometimes, so it's not outside the realm of possibility. In the center of the map are several gravity lifts that propel objects across a deep pit that seems to have no bottom. Blackout. Bathed in frozen moonlight, this abandoned drilling platform is now a monument to human frailty. The purpose of this station was to collect and analyze samples of ancient glaciers. Several groups of glacial core samples can be found in a few rooms throughout the facility. Signage on the outer walls of the facility label it as Weather Station Z/41, implying there are other drilling stations such as this scattered throughout Earth's Arctic region. The Arctic Ocean stretches infinitely in one direction, and the other, a tall ice shelf, towers above the structure. One room contains a basketball hoop. Surely the scientists here would need some form of entertainment. Being in such a remote location with nothing to do but work would drive anyone mad. The center of the map is a landing zone, most likely used to transport supplies and staff to the location. There are multiple lifts throughout the facility, most likely designed to transport heavy supplies and glacial core samples from one area to another. The largest elevator stretches all the way down to a platform on the ocean below, but why would anyone want to go down there? Thanks to the lack of light pollution in such a remote location, tons of stars are visible, despite the fact that the moon is full and an aurora borealis lights up the sky. Watching the sky long enough may lead to the sighting of a shooting star, but I don't know about you, the only wish I'd want to make if I was here would be to wish I was far, far away from this eerie landscape. Blackout bears a striking resemblance to several Forerunner installations with much more sinister purposes. Whether or not Blackout was intentionally designed to look similar to these is not known. Ghost Town. These fractured remains near Voy remind us that brave souls died here to buy our salvation. Based on the landscape and general design of the surrounding structures, it's easy to determine that Ghost Town takes place very close to the same location that the Halo 3 campaign mission, Sierra 117, takes place in. This location is actually just northwest of that area. The original purpose of this facility was to purify and distribute snowmelt from Mount Kilimanjaro to other parts of the continent, but a battle was waged here, destroying much of the facility. Since then, the buildings have fallen into disarray and nature has begun to slowly take the land back from humanity. Eventually, the area was acquired by the UNSC for top-secret tactical exercises and eventually integration into wargame simulations. Cold storage. Deep in the bowels of Installation 05, things have gotten out of hand. I hoped you packed extra underwear. This location is one of the most significant that we've covered so far. Why? Because this is where the flood infestation in Halo 2 started. Thing is, an infestation of this magnitude takes time to develop. A gravemind can't be produced overnight. It's a process. Thanks to the installation's monitor, 2401 Penitent Tangent's complete and total incompetence, the flood would break free and run rampant deep within the Halo, taking control of many key subsystems. Eventually, the flood would coordinate and create a gravemind. For several hundred years, they'd wait and bide their time until an adequate food source unwittingly set them free. Needless to say, preserving the flood here backfired horribly and almost resulted in the entire annihilation of the galaxy. This facility holds an unknown number of flood specimens. Those that didn't escape are most likely stored within these strange tubes. The flood infestation within the inner parts of the facility has stayed relatively self-contained. The only room afflicted is the one where the pure form is stored. Perhaps the flood took control of this room in an attempt to release the creature. Outside of the main area, however, the flood have completely converted the environment, coating every wall with a thick, viscous layer of flood biomass. A large monitor fixed to the ceiling remains ever vigilant, watching for any movement very closely. At some point, someone within the facility, most likely the unnamed monitor fixed to the roof, filed several reports to both 2401 Penitent Tangent and to the steward of the Ark, a monitor named Tragic Solitude. Its reports started with simple requests for a maintenance and security detail because of a nearby specimen breach. After a full 24 hours passed, it reported a security breach via emergency slipstream space. It would do its best to isolate the escapees and disable any transportation conduits before finally reporting 2401 Penitent Tangent's negligence and dereliction of his duties. It's unknown whether or not this monitor ever received a response, but given the state of the flood infestation, I'd say his calls for help were simply ignored. Assembly. The Covenant war machine continues its march to conquest. Even with its head severed, it is still dangerous. Much like the name of the map suggests, Assembly is an assembly line. Specifically, it's one of the Covenant's scarab factories, located somewhere within High Charity. It's part of a larger collection of manufacturing plants, which are referred to as the Assembly Forges. These forges were responsible for the creation of innumerable weapons and tools to help fuel the Covenant's vicious onslaught. High above the play spaces of the map is a massive conveyor belt of sorts that manufactures the body of the scarab using programmable nanomachines. These nanomachines are programmed to create specific patterns, which are basically just design templates. Eventually, the carapace is transported to the next location, where legs and eventually Letgolo worms will be added to control the hulking construct. This particular factory creates the Deuteros pattern scarabs, which are the ones seen throughout Halo 3's campaign. The center of the map is sort of like an artificial island, which sits in the middle of an immense lake of green gaseous coolant. Tubes appear to be full of Letgolo or hunter worms. According to Halopedia, the lake of coolant is full of the creatures. But aside from these cylinders, I can't find any evidence to suggest that's true. I'm not saying it's untrue, I just haven't been able to find anything conclusive. The entire structure is massive and truly highlights the power of the Covenant at the height of their civilization. How this location was cataloged for wargames exercises is unknown, especially when considering the horrific hellscape that High Charity would become after its eventual fall to the flood. Orbital. With a lot of situational awareness and a little luck, hopefully the only thing you will lose is your luggage. Orbital is actually the docking station of one of Earth's space elevators, specifically the Quito space elevator in South America. Looking out the windows, the surface of Earth stretches as far as the eye can see. Above that are countless stars, reaching infinitely into the cosmos. Interestingly enough, Halo 3 ODST's epilogue actually takes place here. Johnson talks to Virgil, or Quick to Adjust, his real name, right here. In the center of the map is a large pit that leads down the spine of the tether and eventually into Earth's atmosphere. This is likely only one of several entrances to the station. Voices can be heard over an intercom system, making various announcements to anyone who happens to be on the station.
Due to security restrictions, all transit between the Quito orbital facilities and the Quito elevator bay facilities are postponed until further notice. We appreciate your patience.
Upon request, all customers are required to present their valid national identification papers to Orbital Elevator Authority personnel.
Several computer screens depict an image of Earth from space, which are images transmitted from Cairo Station, the very same level in Halo 2. Another set of monitors depict an image of the surface of Earth where the base of the tether is fixed, as well as a schematic of the station. Memorials for both Tobias Fleming Shaw and Dr. Wallace Fujikawa adorn the walls of one of the hallways. These men were the creators and original designers of the Shaw-Fujikawa Translight engines, or slipspace drives, the engines that humanity used to travel into slipspace. Several terminals labeled Video Phone are present next to the memorials, most likely for civilians to contact loved ones on the ground or staff usage. This station is also used as an airport of sorts, offering transportation to other planets and colonies within the UNSC-controlled space. All gates are currently closed. Heretic. Because of its speed and luxury, the Pious Inquisitor has become an irresistible prize during these dark times. Heretic is a large room within the confines of a Covenant ship called the Pious Inquisitor. This particular ship has a very interesting history. Its first contact with humanity in the beginning of its recorded history was the Battle of Earth. The Pious Inquisitor was part of the fleet of Sacred Consecration, the group of Covenant ships that Regret led to Earth during the events of Halo 2. Though the battle group was significantly outnumbered by their human foes, Pious Inquisitor survived the altercation under the command of the Brutes. Once the elites broke away from the Covenant, Artas Vadum, the elite shipmaster missing part of his jaw, seized control of the ship and took it back to High Charity, where, under his command, it would help neutralize the flood infestation within. During this purge, one ship managed to escape, however, and fled to Earth.
What is it? More brutes?
Worse.
The newly formed fleet of Retribution, led by Artas Vadum and containing Pious Inquisitor, quickly followed the flood-controlled ship to Earth, and when they arrived, they began blasting Earth's surface with concentrated beams of superheated plasma in an attempt to annihilate any flood on the planet's surface. Once the flood outbreak was contained, Pious Inquisitor traveled through the portal at Void to the Ark and ultimately survived the battle. Eventually, the ship would make its way back to Sankhelios, the elite's homeworld, where it would be stolen by a group of elites that still very much hated humanity. This group of elites foolishly entrusted the ship to a group of jackals who decided to sell the ship to a human terrorist known as Stefan Stensky. Stefan intended to use Pious Inquisitor on Earth as revenge for his missing daughter. He believed his daughter had been stolen from him and conscripted into the military. Unbelievably, he was right. His daughter, Naomi, was stolen at the age of 6 and conscripted into the Spartan II program. But that's an entirely different story for a different day. The elites that the ship was stolen from didn't intend on giving it up without a fight, though. They sent another group of jackals to retrieve it, and in the struggle that ensued, the ship was finally destroyed. Heretic takes place during Pious Inquisitor's time in the fleet of Retribution, the group led by Artas Vadum on his way to Earth. Out of the windows, a large planet floats in the distance, as well as a yellow star. Pious isn't the only Covenant ship nearby. The entire fleet of Retribution is relatively close, each ship flying side by side. The group appears to be headed toward a ringed planet thousands of miles in the distance. Soon, Pious Inquisitor will help humanity in their greatest moment of need by aiding in repelling the flood threat on Earth. Longshore. Abandoned during the invasion of Earth, the Mombasa quays are now bereft of commerce, but rife with danger. Longshore is a fairly innocuous location. It's part of the Mombasa Quays, located in Old Mombasa, Kenya. The facility is owned by Franck's Formed Fish, a company that catches, processes, and sells fish. An employee at AMG Transport Dynamics, the group responsible for the creation of the Warthog, hoped that Franck's would sponsor one of several new Warthog designs in a project called Hog Sticker. This project would lead to the creation of Warthog variants like the Rally Hog or the Needle Hog. Longshore takes place on a foggy morning at an inlet labeled F3 Mombasa Inlet Plant that's surrounded by cranes and large aircraft carriers, which are loaded with pelicans and what appears to be broadswords. The layout of the location makes it a suitable candidate for wargames integration. Waterfall. The UNSC constructed many secret holdfasts during the final years of the Covenant War. Waterfall is a very unique map in Halo 3 because it's one of 3 maps that were added specifically for the Master Chief Collection from a canceled project called Halo Online. Halo Online was a Russian-based free-to-play multiplayer experience that used Halo 3 as the basis to its engine. Eventually the project was scrapped, but many interesting assets were created beforehand, such as the multiplayer maps Waterfall, Edge, and Icebox. That being said, these maps sort of break away from the themes that most Halo 3 multiplayer maps follow. Waterfall takes place in the Zahar system on a planet called Zahar VI. Zahar VI was established as a fallback location and could act as a safe haven for important assets and personnel in a worst-case kind of scenario. Something deep beneath the ice is interesting enough to the UNSC to establish this entire facility. Whatever's down there, it must be important given the resources poured into this place. The UNSC have found some unusual stuff on the planet's 2 moons. The exact nature of these discoveries is unknown. The facility itself is very active and contains several landing pads for pelicans. Towards the back of the facility are landing zones for not only more pelicans, but hornets as well. Several longsword fighters also fly past the structure regularly. Within one of the rooms is a holographic representation of the planet and its 2 moons. Strange red beams crisscross above the planet's ground and occasionally impact on the surface of one of the moons and Zahar VI itself. What these represent is unknown. Across from the hologram are several readouts displaying various information about the planet. These aren't the only readouts in the facility though. There are several others next to the hologram, a few more on the outer edges of the play space, and another next to a window overlooking one of the landing zones. What information these scans are gathering is once again unknown, but whatever it is, the UNSC is very, very interested. Edge. The remote frontier world of Partition has provided this ancient databank with the safety of seclusion. As the description states, Edge takes place on a planet called Partition, which just so happens to be the same planet the Halo 4 multiplayer map Exile takes place on, as evident by the similar and gorgeous terrain. As usual, the Forerunners decided to build this facility in an absolutely jaw-dropping location, in this case at the end of a lush green gorge, lined with rushing waterfalls, once again proving that the Forerunners had a sense of style like no other. The layout of the facility with its symmetrical orange and blue sides makes it an interesting play space for wargame simulations. On each side is a strange symbol. What do they mean? The actual purpose of this facility is to store information. In the back of the building is a massive data storage bank that's constantly being patrolled and maintained by constructor sentinels. What sort of information is housed within these data clusters is, like many other things within these locations, unknown. I noticed something really creepy while recording clips for this map. I kept hearing what sounded like footsteps right behind me. I have no idea what that could be, but it was giving me the creeps and reminded me of the ghosts of Halo from back in the day. If you know, you know. Icebox. Downtown Tyumen's frigid and cloistered Precinct 13 offers an ideal context for urban combat training. Icebox bears a striking resemblance to the Halo 2 multiplayer map Turf. The basic overall layout is almost identical, Tyumen most likely taking inspiration from Mombasa. Tyumen is a town in Russia, which is most likely where this takes place, given that this map originated from a cancelled multiplayer experience created solely for the Russian people. However, it's still possible that it could be Tyumen on another human world, New Harmony, named after the Russian city I just mentioned. Though I don't believe that to be the case. Most signage in the area is Russian, and of course the frigid cold weather patterns also resemble Russian weather. The city itself is quite large, with towering skyscrapers visible in all directions. A train makes regular passes through the skyline as well, undoubtedly ferrying groups of people to work or their homes. Several shops line the streets: an electronics shop, a hardware store, some kind of warehouse, a bar, a hostel, some kind of hospital? I'm not sure about this one, I couldn't get any translators to work. This is a mini market, a couple different restaurants. Whatever this is, I couldn't get any translators to work. And then there's this place, which I once again couldn't translate, as well as several other different types of shops outside the confines of the map. Some of the buildings have Cascade Stronghold Technologies logo on them. As of 2558, the CEO of this company was formerly an ODST, and because of this, he sought to modify ODST armor sets for the Mjolnir platform, even going as far as creating a new version of the iconic gear, specifically for the Spartans. This armor set would eventually be utilized by Edward Buck and his team after their Spartan 4 augmentations. Oh, and I don't mean Osiris, that's technically Locke's team. I'm actually referring to Alpha 9, the group from Halo 3 ODST. Most of them also became Spartan 4s. A logo from Miss Raya Armory adorns a few crates placed throughout the play space. Miss Raya is the company responsible for manufacturing most of the UNSC's weapons. They've created some of the most iconic weapons throughout Halo, like the assault rifle or the battle rifle. A Hornet routinely patrols the area, swooping into the play space and shining bright searchlights downward. Perhaps they're scanning the area for a criminal. There are signs of a struggle here. Several buildings are broken or collapsed. The entire area is walled off from every direction, almost as if the area is being quarantined, as if someone is trying to keep something within these walls. Whew, that's it. We made it. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider liking this video, sharing it, and subscribing. This video was a tremendous undertaking, but a ton of fun to make. I really enjoyed exploring each multiplayer map and looking for weird or hidden details. I also uncovered some interesting stuff that I never noticed and made some cool lore discoveries along the way. If you like this, let me know and I'll make another video analyzing the multiplayer maps in a different Halo game. Okay, now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go play some Halo.